Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Obviously, at the start of a webinar, as we all know, we need a little bit of time to get all ready and rested up and have a cup of tea. So just take a minute or so to get used to it. And then I'll give a bit of housekeeping, and then we'll jump into a little bit of introductions in a second. So welcome again to this webinar. And we'll be jumping into the topic very shortly. So first up, housekeeping. We've got on the top right here of your screen, you'll see an Ask a Question box. Now, what we want from you today is we'd love to see as many questions as possible come through. As we get some interesting topics being thrown at the panelists, I'd love to understand what other answers you'd like, what other questions you'd like to answer from us. Off the back of that, we'd also love to see you throw some chat comments around. You're already doing that in a wonderful way. Thank you for telling us about where you're from, all the wonderful parts of Europe so far, and a few of the Middle East. That's great. Welcome. And then from there, we also want to update you that we'll be doing a recording of this webinar and some post-production work on that to send out to you in the next 48 hours. So keep an eye out for it. If you want to watch it and I guess revisit some of the insights, wonderful. Or perhaps you want to send it on to others who couldn't be here today. That'll be wonderful too. People who can't be here will also receive it if they have registered for this webinar. Anyway, onwards and upwards. So we're going to give a little introduction right now. So we've got two wonderful guests here with us on this webinar. I'm going to start off with Harvey Neve, who is Head of Digital Products and Transformation at Public Health England. Now, Harvey is one of those very unique characters that can seamlessly and very simply articulate what digital transformation is. It doesn't happen very often, so it's wonderful to see someone tell a story around it so simply. I'd love Harvey to quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks, Bazz. Good to see everyone. Thank you for people taking time out to listen to us. That's great. Look forward to the questions. I head up digital transformation and digital products at Public Health England. So here today to talk about that. Looking forward to it. Did you want me to talk about my definition of that right now, Bazz, before other intro?
Not yet, Harvey, but thank you so much for that. We'll get into that in a couple of slides. So thanks for the introduction. And we've also got Matt Lowe. So Matt Lowe is CEO and founder of a business called performance.io, the world's first healthcare and pharmaceutically focused performance marketing agency, and also a very, very good friend and partner of ours. But I'll tell you about that in a second. But for now, let's jump in and hear from Matt.
Matt Lowe. So my background's actually big pharma. I started at pharmaceuticals nearly 20 years ago at Sanofi Santa Labo. Worked across a range of commercial sectors in pharma, but predominantly marketing and digital marketing in the nascent days of digital marketing. So I used data and digital in the early nascent days of digital marketing in healthcare to differentiate resource for drug launches across the UK and Europe. And maybe more luck than judgment, that went well. So I was approached by a mid-sized network agency to head up digital operations out of London and New York for our healthcare companies. So having done that for a number of years across a range of disciplines from policy, PR, marketing, comms, design, dev, medical education, it was maybe a frustration that one of the things I wasn't seeing as much as I would like was data-informed content and a calibration of investment. So in 2015, I launched the industry's first specialist search engine optimization company. And then in 2017, I went on to launch the industry's first specialist healthcare performance marketing agency. We do end-to-end performance for most of the leading pharma companies, a number of leading biotech, and a small group of consumer brands by design, so we can bring those disciplines into healthcare.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Matt. And Malik Akhtar. So Malik is VP of Procurement for Marketing across Bayer Consumer. So Malik is one of those other incredible guests that we've managed to get along here to this webinar, who is, I guess, incredibly frank about the ability and role that procurement plays within the transformational space. And we're looking forward to hearing more of those insights. But for now, Malik, jump in and give a little introduction to the team.
I currently working in the procurement team, marketing procurement team at Bayer, and have specific responsibility for their consumer division. but have previously supported both the pharma and animal health groups as well. So have worked across a broad spectrum of the healthcare areas. And prior to that, spent a long time working at GSK. So spent a long time in healthcare. Very happy to be here today and to give you my perspective on digital transformation, but and to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Fantastic. Give a bit of a breakdown of who I am, where I come from, and I guess the business that I work with as well. So essentially, I'm Bazz, EMEA for Shootsta. And the reason I'm here, I guess, in the first place is because I've always loved, I guess, to challenge different industries and different places that I've worked and been in an environment that does challenge the status quo. I think for me, I've come from a background from visual storytelling through technology. And when I came into, contact with Shootsta, I saw a business that was truly in sync with that notion. And the idea of how do you actually transform the way that businesses tell their stories more effectively, from whether it's external or internal communications through the HR, L&D, or whatever it might be through sales. So we essentially help clients scale their video content by help nurturing their information and knowledge around shooting video content, and empower them with custom-built camera kits to tell those stories more effectively. And then we do the post-production, and we turn it around in 24 to 72 hours, depending on the digital products that they want to create. First up, I guess we'll see on the screen in a second, essentially the topic we're talking about today. Now, you've all seen it. The reason you're here, of course, is for us to challenge when is digital transformation truly going to happen in the healthcare and pharmaceutical space. So I guess I'll give a bit of a breakdown and understanding of what we're going to cover as part of that. Now, this session is incredibly fluid. The point is we want to hear from Malik and Harvey. We want to dive deep into some of their insights, and there may be certain parts that we jump over, but we're predominantly trying to cover off how healthcare is adapting to the new normal in this current day and age. And then we'll move on from there into how to use data-driven insights to inform your communication decisions. That is absolutely a critical part. And then from there, I guess it will hopefully transition nice and seamlessly into the different use cases and understanding of how video content should be created and how to do it more effectively in this day and age. And then if we have time, we're going to wrap up with what does the future hold for the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry as we know it. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, we'll finish with about 15 to 20 minutes of question and answer time at the end of this webinar. So obviously hold fire for that. We'll make sure we answer some of your key questions that are thrown us throughout the next 40 or so minutes. Wonderful. So a bit of an idea or introduction to this topic today. How did we end up here? An interesting one for me personally. I actually started having a bit of thought provocation off the back of a personal, situation that occurred to me at the start of COVID. Essentially, my uncle collapsed, unfortunately, and was in critical care and sent to hospital. And that gave me a really deep understanding of how that space has transformed, both, I guess, for the better, and in some respects, what has not been filled in terms of gaps, and how do we actually connect with patients in that process, and how do we ensure that they come back to their normal life as quickly as possible, and also that their family are nurtured along that journey effectively, ideally through some digital processes or shape or form. So that's sort of the reason where it came from, but ultimately there's more to it than that. It's obviously we're talking about an industry that is traditionally bound by red tape, but I guess has now got an opportunity to really flourish and try new things and really transform far more quickly. So we thought we'd jump into that and understand a little bit more about how the world is changing rapidly and how especially that has been affected by these latest events. But it's not predominantly about COVID, it's about the future. It's about us understanding the host of players that are going to get involved within healthcare and pharmaceuticals. And I guess, how are they mixing it up? How are they challenging this industry? And finally, I believe there's an incredible story to tell from healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry. And of course, we want to see more of that brought to the fore. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of the topic itself. But now, obviously, I've spoken a lot. It's time to hand over to Matt Lowe for a few of his insights on the key topic.
All right, thank you, Bazz. Malik, good to have you back on board. I was thinking about filling in relation to procurement in pharma, where my knowledge is limited. The first thing I would say is, we in digital and in pharma and healthcare love an acronym, and me more than most. So I'll try not to use any acronyms today to work to the lowest common denominator. We'll have people just interested in the broader topic, which is incredibly nebulous, and those interested in more deeper video, data-driven insights, procurement, and what's going on more broadly in the space. So we'll try to use a very simple language. I'll try not to use any acronyms. There's a comment and chat element there if I do, to hold me accountable. And the second, if there's any really tough questions, Bazz said he'd love to take all of those at the back end of this. So moving on to this environment. Having worked in pharmaceutical sector and therefore healthcare for nearly 20 years across both agencies and client side, I think I've seen more change in the last 4 months than I have in that 20 years when it comes to digital transformation, digital technologies being adopted. But there's a couple of things I want to address. Firstly, it is an incredibly nebulous area, digital transformation. From in pharma, we could be talking about the design and development of compounds, to supply chain, to clinical trial recruitment and management, sales and marketing, comms, people, data. And then more broadly in the healthcare space, from how we reimagine healthcare with triaging, with waiting rooms, with track and trace, and to Bazz's point, making it a better experience, taking people from sick care to healthcare. The second point I wanted to add is that we are going to focus today on areas that Bazz and I see optics behind the screen for a range of companies, both with performance.io in healthcare and pharma, and Shootsta with healthcare clients they work with us and independently, and also on consumer brands like LinkedIn, Airbnb, Salesforce, so on and so forth. And that is that these changes are here to stay. So I think I was listening to Sarah Wilkinson, who's the CEO of NHS Digital, saying that this tech is here to stay, and actually this landscape just allowed us to remove those time-consuming barriers. And I'm interested in what's going on in this space. We've seen a whole plethora of free webinars on digital transformation. You just have to look on LinkedIn, and the irony is not lost on me. There's been a lot of change. It's here to stay. People are using this as a catalyst, rightly or wrongly, to think about how we reimagine engagement, how we reimagine digital transformation, and how we use digital to engage with our audiences. And so on that note, I'm going to hand over an almost impossible task to Harvey with his role, and ask him how he would define digital transformation first and foremost, and what are the foundations that are fundamental for any organization to understand in order to drive a successful digital transformation.
Thank you very much, Matt. Yeah, well, that's the question we all get asked, is what is digital transformation? It is a bit nebulous, but I think the most concise sort of definition I've heard is the harnessing of technology and the use of data to deliver user-centered design services out in an internet age, so modern day services. And I think the thing that's happened recently with it being called digital transformation is really the expectation from customers and users, consumers, changing as things move from being very much technology was of the office place, and now it's moved out over the last sort of decade to being in your hand, and it's there all the time. You bring it into the office, you don't sort of leave it at home when you come into work. So the whole notion of technology, the fabric of our lives is entwined by the use of technology. And what underpins it, when I boil it down, I've simply boiled it down to a Venn diagram, because I like diagrams, a bit of a visual person. So I talk about all change, whatever you call it, digital transformation, otherwise, is about people. But the difference here is that digital transformation isn't something that you can just buy off a shelf. And in the maturity we've got now is that I think we're recognizing the relationship between, I think the Venn's up on screen now that I generally draw out, you know, down the pub on a beer mat, you can draw this one out, is the relationship between people, place, and the technology they use. So it's the work people do, how they do that work, and where they do that work. And when you get all those three working together, and you get change developing in all those three parts of the Venn diagram, then you get digital transformation. So you have to have people that understand that can deploy design thinking that can then work in that user-centered design, all those agile teams, Scrum teams, all the rest of it, digital teams that I'm sure a number of those people watching will know. You need not only to attract and retain those people, but you need to give them the right environment and the right tools to be able to do their work. So that's why that Venn diagram comes nicely together, I think. Thank
you. Incredibly concise. And Bazz said you'd do that at the beginning. I wasn't convinced anyone could do that, but that works. I would, if it's okay, Malik, I won't ask you for your definition of digital transformation, but I'll ask you what it means to you within Bayer as an organization and then within procurement as a faculty. Sure.
So I was just read out what I just wrote down from Harvey. So thank you for that definition. So now, I mean, for Bayer as a whole, I think digital transformation means different things. I mean, talked very well in the introduction about it's not just obviously in the area of communications and marketing. It's the area I'm closest to, but some of the types of projects that we're working on, I think it's fair to say we're already in the works, but have been accelerated by the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. I mean, you very rightly pointed out, the people's behavior, to pick out, one of the comments on the Venn diagram has changed. So how we interact and communicate with those people is now very much happening in a digital way more than the more traditional communication. So that's one of the main things that we're seeing, and we're doing a lot of work at the moment around precision marketing and how you adopt a more of a precision marketing approach. What does it mean for procurement? That's very interesting. I think that there is a difference between strategic and operational procurement roles. There are the strategic functions where I would like to class myself, working very closely to partner with the divisions and the businesses that we're supporting. But there are equally lots of very operational tasks which ultimately won't need to be done by a human being. So how we accelerate that, whether it's as we're going through legal contracting processes, as we're going through some of the more, as I said, the operational transactional work, that's where we're seeing that. And actually, one of the things that we're seeing is the expansion of e-commerce into business applications. So we all use it every single day of the week at home, quite a lot in the last 12 weeks, if I'm honest with you. But actually, as that's expanding into the business world and we can adopt similar approaches, we're seeing a real impact.
Thank you. Incredibly useful. It may negate my next question a bit, because I was going to ask both of you, how are you seeing Public Health England in a time when they are stretched and having to react, create, map out, define what new normal may look like within public health in the UK? How are you seeing PHE behave differently, Harvey? And what do you not want to see go back to how it was?
Yeah, well, we had the challenge like everybody else did. I think I like to think we're more prepared than most for it, because we kind of knew a pandemic would hit us at some stage. We were ready for that. We're a first responder. This is our turf, if you like. But it was still really difficult. We had to change from having maybe 800 or so people online, every day, any one particular time, to more than 4,000 online at any one time. So just the strain it puts on your systems was really big. We managed to do that really quickly and really effectively and efficiently. So it was a big hats off to our ICT teams. The challenges of remote working, we're all seeing, that using VT equipment like this, all the dial-ins and the video calls, puts a different strain on yourselves. It can feel really tiring, can't it, after a day on these things. But it also gives a lot more flexibility, so people can flex their lives around their work a bit more easily. So when I think about the tools we're using the digital tools. We're Microsoft House, so we've got Office 365 being used, and our digital teams we're using, Slack and all the other channels, everything, you give it to them, they'll use it. But all those collaboration tools have really come into their own, and we've seen a big acceleration of the use of that, and the protocols, all the ways of working, developing before our eyes. So I think when you think about that Venn diagram again, and you think about the behavior and the place, what we're trying to do for the future, I don't like the phrase new normal, because normal to me suggests some sort of conditioning. And real, true agile teams, modern businesses are places where people can bring, their true, authentic self to work, and they can do their best work working together collaboratively. So what we've had accelerated is some real breaking of old time, sort of 19th century machine bureaucratic, Tayloristic sort of models of working. We've been really smashed apart some of those paradigms. So there's, if you're playing, bingo in the background, there's a few phrases for you to start a few lines up. But I mean, they have, and people don't want to go back to those ways of working. They can see that being locked up in your house, working 100% from your desk at home or whatever, dining room table, is an extreme thing. But I think they're recognizing actually being dragged into an office every day to sit at the same desk is just as extreme, but it was the norm. So what people at our place and what we're encouraging is that people find the best of the new, and they think about what was actually working and the best of the old, and we will then enable them to create a great new working way of working to enable us to move forward as a modern user-centered business. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you for that answer, Harvey, as well. And I love the fact that you've looked at that, not just going with the standard cliche words, it's actually looking at this as a sort of an opportunity for us to embrace what is just progress, really, isn't it? It's
the cultural side. It's that move from caricature, to make the point, because it's never this stark, but well, hopefully not. But it's moving from a command and control to enabling servant leadership, and the blend is somewhere in the middle. And you've had to trust people more since they've been working at home. Everyone's had no choice. You have to trust your people. Well, the reality is a lot of people are finding it's more productive to work at home for certain tasks. So why not trust them when they come back in, when things get back to more of a usual options in front of us? Why not let them work in the best way possible? And if that's more of a blend of working at home, then fine. Use the technology that we've got used to over the last sort of 12 weeks or so, and enable people to do a bit more productive, better work with a better life balance.
Yeah, certainly. And I think obviously I'd love to hear your opinion on that, Malik, with regards to our next topic, which is sort of seamlessly interlinked with that, around the knowledge sharing, the insight sharing in this day and age, because I believe that Harvey's point was incredibly relevant. The irony of the fact that actually we've been moved to remote working, yet we're actually sharing more effectively in this day and age is fascinating. Malik, does that resonate with you? Are you seeing that in your global teams? Are you seeing sharing both internally and externally, really starting to flourish? How's it working?
Yes, so really primarily internally, I think. I mean, to Harvey's point, so we always had the tools available and the technology available. I don't think we ever really imagined we'd be using it to this extent as quickly as we have. And I think equally, it's been really seamless, and that's testament to the teams that have been working very hard in the background to support us. So we're connected all the time, and in terms of sharing insights, it's working really, really well. And one of the things, to the previous question about what I don't want to lose when we go back, is what we've really seen is the speed of decision making has been really improved. So actually, what this has forced us to do is to really quite ruthlessly prioritize what's important. And in the industry that we're in, what's important is obviously supplying our products to the people that need them in the situation they find themselves at the moment. I support the marketing teams. You could argue that marketing is at the moment entirely discretionary. You don't need to advertise our products at the moment for obvious reasons. So that's one of the things I wouldn't want to go back to, the kind of the bureaucracy I think you mentioned, in the future. But at the moment, we are hyper connected. It's working really well.
Certainly. Yeah, it resonates very well. And thank you for those insights, guys. Now, we will move along because we're going to get on. We've got about 15, 20 minutes more. So how do you believe that should work from a point of view of using data to drive the way you communicate? Are you seeing those insights from data being translated effectively into communications, whether that's answering query-based content online, or doing any other points around that area? What are you both seeing? Maybe start with Malik from your side.
So we obviously are working very hard in terms of collating all of the data that we need to do to bring together to make informed decisions. I made mention earlier of the work that we're doing or looking at on precision marketing. A lot of that, as you'll know if you've ever been stalked on your mobile device, is based on setting up and defining specific audiences that are relevant for you and your products, and that obviously works primarily in the consumer space. And how we get to that and how we enable that with data is obviously a combination of first, second, third party data, whatever is going to give us the right insights. But using that to target is our main focus.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that breakdown. So you'll see obviously up here, there'll be a poll come up in a moment. That poll is, I guess, designed to be a little bit sort of provocative in some respects. So we'd love to know your incredibly wholesome and honest answer around how much do audience need for your own online content and structure. So we want to know and hear from the audience, and please feel free to jump in, be, as I said, as honest as possible, and give us your feelings and thoughts around where you're heading in that space. Amazing. First person off the bat as always. So that's great to see. And I'm looking forward to analysing those results in a moment. We'll let you, I guess, answer away for the next couple of minutes whilst I ask Malik and Harvey some more questions, and then we'll come back and discuss those insights in just a moment. So I guess into our space, and I guess as I mentioned earlier, Shootsta works in the scalable video model. So why we even exist essentially came from a need from our original audience, which were more on the hero video content. We came from a hero agency pedigree, as we call it, and essentially 2 or 3 clients came to us early on saying, listen, we love what you do, we love hero content, but essentially we want to understand how to meet the need of a greater scaled audience, whether that's both internally or externally, because our teams can't keep up, and to be honest, the current model is too expensive and far too cumbersome and slow. And so I guess for us, it's helped answer a few key needs that Malik and Harvey have mentioned before, which is how do you share audience insights faster? How do you share internal insights quicker to your teams? To understand from you first, Harvey, what kind of content trends you're seeing across healthcare in your space, and of course in healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing videos really relevant because we're seeing attention spans going down. We're seeing people want to get information quickly. We're visual creatures while we've got 2 eyes. So we like all this stuff. You look at the vloggers on YouTube and you look at the TikTok generation, all that sort of stuff. The 3 to 5 minute sort of video thing can be really powerful. And so for Public Health England, we're here to, if you like, try and keep people as healthy as they can possibly be. You know, if you're not, then you're being helped by the health service to fix you if something goes wrong. So we're here to protect and improve public health, you know, improve health inequalities. And we do that by giving people information if they want it, allowing them to draw down information which helps them to make more informed or better informed decisions about their lifestyle choices, whether it's, you know, drinking, smoking, all the classic stuff, exercise and all the rest of it. And what we're seeing is the younger generations coming through now, but it is through all generations. We've got 5 generations in the workplace course, but the younger generations especially are wanting to be more informed. They want more facts about these things so they can make more informed decisions. So video plays a big part in what we do. You'll have seen that in some of the apps that we put out, the Couch to 5K stuff, you know, the Stoptober videos and bits and bobs that go out. You'll see that kind of engagement. Now, of course, with change, when you're talking about digital transformation as well, if you're going through that Kotter model of kind of creating urgency and creating a vision is the next stage you get to, and a coalition of the willing, creating the vision can be so much more powerful when you bring it to life with video. So video is coming more and more into the fore with driving change. And of course, it's easier to do now because there's video on phones. There's companies like yourself, you know, offering services out that are affordable and produce really high quality stuff for companies. So yeah, we're seeing a definite shift in the mix of channels that are used to drive change and communicate with customers right through industry, not just in healthcare.
Fantastic. Thank you for those insights, Harvey. And I think from Malik, from your side, I'd love to hear your thoughts, maybe even outside of our space, so in different forms of digital content and different ecosystems. What are you seeing right now in terms of, I guess, content trends in this current age?
So I mean, I think so to echo some of the points that Harvey made. I mean, video is becoming increasingly important for us. If I think about some of the impacts of the situation we find ourselves in at the moment, obviously there's a lot of user-generated content that we're seeing on our screens. We are more focused now in educational, I suppose, more than promotional messaging. But at the same time, obviously, we have to make sure that all of the video assets and other digital assets for to support our e-commerce activities for those products which are OTC is updated, because obviously that's had much more focus at the moment with the crisis that we find ourselves in. But all forms of digital content, video is a key part of that for sure.
Sure. Thank you for those insights, Malik. And we've got Matt back. Hopefully you can hear him. Matt, are you there?
I'm here. Whether or not you can hear me, I'm not going to be able to determine until you look at me with an odd look or I see some comments. But yeah, I'm here.
You're back. I can hear you perfectly and see you perfectly as well, Matt. So I think obviously we will jump back up in a second now, and let's go to those poll results, because I think that would be a nice tie-in for your point earlier, Matt, around how much the audience needs and form online content and structure. So let's jump back there. Sorry, audience, for moving around, but I think it's an appropriate sort of poll to discuss. So Matt, I think I'd love to hear your thoughts and insights around that.
All right, thanks very much. Great to see that poll. I'm not suggesting there's going to be so many insights here that make people change their minds. They may not, but I'd love to do it again at the end and see if what we're talking about has impacted people's perception of understanding audience needs. At performance.io, I built it out of a necessity. The industry's first end-to-end online performance specialist healthcare agency, 20 years after Larry and Sergey beated their back rubber thesis out of Stanford. And I still, for an industry that spends billions on soft skills and in-call quality and a traditional model of engaging audiences, to routinely ignore the first step in nearly all of its customers' user journey. And what do I mean by that in terms of data-informed insights? When you look at a report of 2017, the Digital Journey to Wellness, 77% of patients said they start their journey with a search engine. HubSpot, a think tank in the search engine optimization space, says 80%. And that goes as high as 93%, saying they start their journey for healthcare information via a search engine. Now, if it's a universal experience for nearly everybody, Bazz, and we can put, when we say audiences, we can put mum, dad, carer, nurse, pharmacist, consultant, GP, tertiary lead, payer. If that is a universal experience for an industry that spends all that money on soft skills and in-call quality, to routinely ignore that step, it's not saying everyone does, is a little bizarre. So at performance.io, working and having optics into a number of those companies, but we do see some really bright projects, some progressive projects who are determined to understand user intent, not what their strategic imperatives are and their critical success factors for a brand plan, but actually looking at billions of data sets across universal search, video, imaging, news, and really starting to understand with semantic search queries exactly what people are after. By interrogating that kind of data, we can then start to understand the ecosystem that will allow clients to win online, which pre-peri, post-COVID-19 should have been critical, but it seems to have been a catalyst for people really reaching out to us in particular, or other agencies, saying digital transformation, exposure, user experience, search engine optimization, this is now a priority. We've got to win those positions online for healthcare professionals, patients, carers, payers, whoever it may be, to reach our resources and assets, and then we need to triage them to the right place. And it's incredibly important. When we look at universal behaviors, insights to content, data to content, and if you put this, you think about this yourself, when you last went to a search engine, when did you click on a paid advert? I mean, I've asked that question to many thousands of people, and the answer is often never. We've become predictably and reliably web savvy that we don't want to be sold to. So we all go down to the first 3 organic positions on a search engine, and they pick up around 70% of all clicks. So if you don't have an ecosystem which allows you to build trust and authority that puts you into that real estate, you really don't have an online proposition. And for an industry that talks about being customer-centric, patient-centric, it takes a fraction of a second on a search engine to look at how the industry really provisions for audiences and really looks to understand user intent. And I'll finish on that, Bazz. We take those data sets, we then use that to define the optimal domain strategy, URL hierarchy, the right taxonomy. Once we've got all that in place, we then go into a data-informed content piece. And the reason I say that is because of the programs we've inherited, or the ones we've won, or the ones we've looked under the bonnet, that has never been in place. And conceivably, every pound you spend on video, every pound you spend on social, on content, on PR, driving someone somewhere, is predicated by that ecosystem. So we can drive efficiencies from end to end, and it should be data and user intent defining the ecosystem, and then advanced performance, advanced analytics in search engine optimization, conversion rate optimization, landing page optimization, attribution modeling, which defines how you then create the next best content for your audiences. And I think there's to Harvey's point, there's a skills piece there. A lot of the things I've mentioned aren't in the traditional core competency framework for a drug company across a number of roles, but certainly across marketing, communications, sales. So I think people are looking at this landscape. They're starting to prioritize it as an area that they realize they need to win, because again, to Harvey and Malik's point, people don't really care about who it is. They care about user experience. There was a great podcast or event last week with Splendid, who are a great company in the UX UI space, who said in healthcare, it's not a demand issue. The demand is there. It's a supply issue. We don't know how to engage with audiences online. And we're seeing COVID-19, peri-COVID-19, maybe not yet post, really accelerating the ambition to start to wise up and smarten up in this space.
Well said, Matty. Thank you so much for the insight. And good to have you back as well. So what we'll do now is, of course, we've gone over a few of these little fun games issues. So let's jump into Q&A, because I think it's so important to hear from the audience. And we can get back to a few of those other questions if need be. Now, a little feedback there. So I think what we'll do first, if Nick, if you can let me know if there's been any key questions so far, we'd love to put them displayed up on the screen, and obviously I'll ask them again, and we can hear from Malik and Harvey and Matt and myself around any of those key questions, depending on which area they focus on. So Nick, just firstly, are there any key questions that I should ask, or should I jump to some of the ones that were submitted by the audience before the webinar?
Well, Bazz, we have a fantastic question here from Olivia, who asked, as this pandemic has meant that many customer journeys will need to be reimagined, what is the first on your list, and what will be the greatest areas of change?
Thank you, Nick. So let's throw that to Malik first up. Malik, what are your thoughts on that?
Changing customer consumer journeys. So obviously we're doing a lot of work, and pre-COVID crisis, we were doing a lot of work on defining customer consumer journeys. I mean, that really continues. I mean, the journeys themselves are being updated based on the habits that we're seeing, the behavior in terms of whether it's media consumption, purchase consumption, and that's really being fed into the mix with all the other data that I referred to earlier on. So the journeys may change, the audiences that we're defining to communicate to may change, but the approach and the structure is still the same for us.
Cool. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. And I think might also be interesting to hear Harvey, slightly different spin view with regards to customer journeys. I suppose for you it's a different goal, but I'd love to know from your perspective how you're interacting.
Yeah, I suppose the one I've been watching, which not directly involved in, but is how GPs have been able to do online consultations with people. I think the potential for that to really revolutionise. It was going on anyway, so it's not brand new, but it's certainly been scaled over this. So it'll be really interesting how that goes. I was just writing down the use of an app for tracking and tracing, and I'm just thinking, do I even mention that at the minute, given the hotness of that potato? But I think the fact that you can have a phone in your pocket that tells you your proximity to others and the power that can give in helping track and trace, and we'll see that develop, before our eyes over the next few weeks and months. That'll be fascinating as well, and that is going to revolutionise how disease outbreaks are managed, and there'll be loads of learning will come from that. And that is still a journey, a customer journey. Yes. And there are other ones. There are loads that we were looking at anyway, through the health system, where we want better use of technology and data to give customers, users, what they would expect from a service. Time and time again, we hear people say, well, it's easy for me to buy, listen to an MP3 now. I don't have to get the bus into town to buy a record or something. Why can't I do X, or why can't I do Y? Why does it have to be like this? And I think the whole healthcare sector is looking at more and more ways of applying, these modern user-led, all the stuff that Matt was talking about, user-centered design. You design with users, not for them. And so that number that came in that survey should be up towards 100% of essential, or whatever the top answer was there. It was about 50-50. You should always have your users absolutely center stage in all the services that you design, and how you iterate those and keep building those over time. A product is never finished.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's always good as well for a few curveballs with regards to the tracking and tracing as well. It's nice to mix it up with a bit of that sentiment. But Matt, I'd love to know your thoughts on that particular question. You got any top priorities with regards to the customer journeys that your team and your clients are currently focused on, in the specific areas of interest?
It's fairly myopic, and I wish I could offer optics on other areas, but clients have reached out to us quite a lot since COVID-19 to say we need to understand user intent, and we need to then provision. To Harvey's point, it should be created with users in mind, but user experience is everything. But you need to reach and impact as broad an audience as possible. And then the data that yield starts to tell you whether you are, your site has trust and builds authority, and people are engaging with lots of it, and they're converting on events and goals that you've set. I'd like to see the skill set change in-house in pharma, to brief agencies like mine better, to hold agencies to account. We all become echo chambers for our clients. As soon as we see a brief, it's impossible not to. So in many ways, for us to look at a landscape and say, great, that's what you think. We're going to tell you what audiences want. We're going to marry the two, then define the ecosystem. And that skill set, the people piece that Harvey talked about, giving teams across corporate government affairs, marketing, communications, the skill and ability to look at dashboards, real-time dashboards, Power BI, data studios, Google Analytics, it doesn't matter, and interpret that to make brave, bold, quick decisions. And then the one piece that I'd really like to see change there, and it might be off the question, is back to Sarah Wilkinson and the NHS digital chief exec, removing those time-consuming barriers. A great friend said to me once, a no is easier than a yes, and we are guilty, in my experience, my humble opinion, in pharmaceuticals, of wrapping red tape around something and constricting it before it's been considered if it's slightly new or slightly, we don't do SEO in healthcare. Well, why wouldn't we? For all of our platforms, you're allowed to compliantly. We won't do paid media for healthcare professionals outside of North America. So understanding that and exploring it, I'd like to see some of those brave people issues, skills issues addressed, and celebrate the pockets where people are doing it properly and impacting and reaching more people.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think also from our side, I guess one thing that resonated so well with me there, Harvey, was the notion of changing the way we engage and interact with different, whether it might be HCPs or working with reps or whatever else it might be. It's the notion that people are changing the way they interact across the board. And I think we saw a huge, incredible stat in the Kearney report that Matt mentioned earlier, which was a 2,000% increase in engagement or need to engage virtually. And so I think that's really changing the game with regards to the need for this industry to move very quickly and understand that appetite and actually deliver content, whether it might be video, whether it might be online or copy-based, whatever else it might be. It has to be delivered in an effective manner, and how do you actually share that effectively too? So I think there's an important piece around that that needs to be really focused on. I'd love to jump into one last question, I think, before we wrap up. And it's come from The audience pre the webinar, which I think is a really relevant one that maybe Malik, you could talk to, or of course I'd love to hear from you, Harvey, as well on this one. But based on, and I don't have the exact name, it's anonymous, so I'll just speak to the actual question itself. So based on my experience over the last 10 weeks, clinicians have been slow to adopt digital ways of working. Will clinicians be interested in engaging digitally for the medium to longer term? What are some of the stats we're hearing about digital ways of working during COVID-19 a false dawn? How do you reflect on that one, Malik?
Let me think. So, I mean, we work with a really broad spectrum of clinicians through primary and secondary care, and some of them have real preferences in how and when and obviously how often that you engage with them, and that we still continue to manage that spectrum of communication requirements. What we are doing obviously is, we've done a small foray into remote detailing activities. We've doubled down in that area because of the necessity of the current situations found ourselves in. But there's still some people, obviously, that just doesn't resonate. It doesn't work for them. The door needs to be at least open a little bit for you to push it open a bit further and to deliver the messages and the educational information. So I suppose the proportional split of how we're doing it is we have seen more adoption. Is it 100%? No, but I wouldn't expect it to get to 100%.
Certainly. Yeah, I can imagine. It has to be a balance, isn't it? There always has to be a solid mix between the two. And Harvey, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, obviously that's an experience of who asked the question. I think the answer is that it's going to be very, very mixed, and change, especially when change is forced upon people, they react at first and then they start to, settle down and respond and then stabilize. And what we're seeing is clinicians and all of us really starting to stabilize and get used to a new way of working. And behavioural scientists will tell you it takes about 9-12 weeks for new behaviours, if you like, to embed. But I think with any change, you've got those pioneers that just want to be running at the prize. They're like greyhounds out of a trap. The minute something's there, they're on it, and they don't care if it's not quite ready. They want to give it a go. And then you've got the settlers that come afterwards, and then you have the sort of people resisting, being pushed by the bar, if you like, as the lowest amount of change necessary sort of pushes them forward. But with any change, you've got to give people a reason. You've got to make it real for them, and you've got to make it of value, of a benefit to them. It can be a pain to change stuff that you're comfortable with. Why change? And again, it comes back to like video, because if you've got those pioneers, real people, clinicians in the real world, not people like me that are sitting, building services, but real people that are using them. If you can get people like them waxing lyrical about the benefits of the changes that are happening or the new ways of working that are taken on board, then they're so much more impactful. So a 1-minute talking head video from a real person, clinician that's using this stuff and benefiting from it, can be more valuable than papers and people like me wittering on about them. But of course, you have to get those people on board first. So I think we're on a journey with it. Some will like it, some won't.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, well said. Well, thank you, Harvey, for that final insight. And I guess I'll leave it to you, Matt, and then we'll wrap up straight after you. So, Matt, I think probably one insight pulled from Harvey's point was the notion of pioneers and those that follow. So I'd love to know from you, Matt, what have you seen out there with regards to the true ones that are pioneering this spirit and really driving home all of the aspects we've discussed today with regards to the transformational processes that are happening in communications development?
Wow. Okay. Thanks, Bazz. I guess in terms of the pioneers, performance.io, we're a service agency. We run end-to-end performance. So there's many in a number of global cities, but those that forensically understand medical, legal, regulatory, the guidelines, protocols, customers, the environment they live in is probably fewer. So we are trying to break down the status quo. It's why, frankly, it's why we partner with Shootsta. I was fed up of putting videos out to tender, which cost tens of thousands of pounds, trying to find the talent and then retain authenticity when technology enables us to do it for hundreds of pounds, hundreds of dollars in 24 hours. So I guess all the people that we work with in this space, I would put as pioneers, because, to a message I had come in during this, we need to hold. I don't doubt for a second that everyone in healthcare isn't, they aren't patient-centric. Of course they are, and customer-centric. But a fraction of a look on a search engine and a look at the results shows you that we don't behave like it. And I think this catalyst will allow those pioneers to continue to maybe have a little bit more weight behind them in the boardroom when they're pitching for budgets, to say all of our audiences are asking for it, all of them expect it. Our CSFs aren't based on user intent. And, there may be still a little bit of this tick box exercise in, we need a website, we need a Facebook page, do some videos. And the pioneers we see fight hard for that change. And then what we do is empirical, from user-driven video, answering user intent in 45 seconds around the top 10 queries, through to attribution modeling, email optimization, whatever it might be. The data sets are unequivocal, very hard to argue with. And so it enables us to give those pioneers something valuable back in saying we're still interested in emotion and user experience, but is governed and powered by data. So that's probably a good jumping off point for me.
Lovely. Thank you, Matt. And I think obviously also from my side, guys, thank you so much for your time. I know we're just wrapping up. We've got 1 minute to go. Those were utterly fascinating insights. And I think we're looking forward to wrapping this up with that post-produced video content that we'll send out in the next couple of days, which pulls out some of these key insights and makes it into a nice and easily absorbable piece of content. So once again, Malik, Harvey, and Matt, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bazz, for hosting.
Thank you.
No problems at all. And apologies for some of the technical issues along the way, everyone watching. We'll look forward to the next steps. And of course, there may be more of this coming in with regards to a series around webinars. So we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feelings around this activity. And we will chat to you very soon. But have a lovely day. And bye for now.